Hello guys, SkyPoint here. Sorry I've been away so long, but between real life getting incredibly busy and me getting sucked into a whole bunch of other games, I just haven't had the time I wanted to make Horus Heresy Legions videos. But I'm back, and what a time to be back, because the developers have dropped a huge balance pass today. They have touched no fewer than 8 different factions, and we're going to go through all of those in this video, but we are going to start with the Ultramarines. So they have had the majority of the changes. Let's start going through their cards. Number 1 is going to be, where's it gone down here? Bellaria Squad. So Bellaria Squad used to have the ability, had average stats, 3 energy for 3 attack, 3 health, and if you were outnumbered, Courage would trigger and they would deal 2 points of damage to a random enemy. That was fine, but it meant that they were very lackluster if you were not outnumbered, and especially if you faced a warlord who just didn't use other troops, like most Angron decks. So Bellaria Squad has a neat little buff. Now it will always deal 1 point of random damage to a random enemy troop, and if you are outnumbered, it'll deal 1 additional point of damage. So it's just as good as it was before, but it's even better, if you catch my meaning. So if you're outnumbered, still you get 2 points of damage. If you're not outnumbered, you're still doing 1 point of random damage. Alright, next up is Scipio Bike Squad. So I think these guys would just create an extra copy in your hand if you were outnumbered before. Now they've become area damage. So this will be very useful against factions which have lots of low health stealth units, right? 1 point of damage to all enemies, and there's so many other situations where 1 point of board damage is going to be great. Especially when you're up against defenders of Caliban and they play that 8 energy card which creates 5 Caliban Jaegers. This is going to help you keep those Jaegers under control. Kossos Squad is next. Where's it gone here? I think they used to be another one which would make a copy of them in your hand. That has now changed. So this is actually, again, more stealth hate, right? Now, if you're outnumbered, they deal 3 points of damage to a random stealthed enemy. And honestly, I think the majority of stealthed units in this game tend to have relatively low health. So Kossos Squad can actually be very, very useful now as an anti-stealth card, which is excellent. Next is the Ingenious Command Squad. Where have they gone down here? Where have I passed them? Over here. So they have now been changed. So I think before they had an energy ability, which meant you had to put them on the board and wait until the next turn when hopefully they were still alive, and then you'd be able to spend energy and either do damage or heal. They have the same ability, but it's been changed to rally rather than energy. So you cannot repeatedly use it, but you're now guaranteed to get at least one use of their ability out, and I think that makes this a pretty good buff. Next is one of my favorites. So Captain Alcaeus was a very popular card. Where's he gone? Over here. So his basic stats haven't changed, and his basic stats are what made him really good. He helped you to take control of the early game because he cost 4 energy and had above average stats, 4 attack and 5 health. His ability was useful, but it kind of slowed you down. Before, you used to spend 2 energy and you would get 3 random Ultramarine cards, I think low cost cards. Yep, 3 or less. But they've changed him now to be a free use. That makes him a lot better, and it makes him into a really strong card for your deck. I love this change. Honestly, Captain Alcaeus was one of my favorite Ultramarine cards anyway, and this just makes him really powerful. Apothecary Theon is next, so coming in at 5 energy. Before, he used to basically just heal, I think, 2 points of healing to a random unit at the end of the turn, and now he's actually been significantly buffed. He heals 2 to 2 random friendly units, not just 1. So this is going to really help the Ultramarines keep their board presence alive. Honor Guard has had a very handy change as well, just very subtle. Their stats used to be 4 attack, 5 health. They've been bumped up to 5 attack, 5 health, which is really appropriate, because otherwise, if their courage was not triggered, they were a below average unit, right? You're spending 5 energy and getting 5 out of that, which is, not great. But with this change, the Honor Guard is becoming even better, and when their courage triggers, of course, they're now a 6 attack, 6 health, frontline unit for just 5 energy. Fantastic. Another legendary with a buff, Captain Corvo. Again, pretty subtle over here. He used to be 5 attack, 5 health. He's now been bumped up to 6 attack, 5 health. The rest of his abilities stay the same. He was already a very popular Ultramarine card, and he's just even better now. Next up, Stillus Veterans. Now, this is one you hardly ever used to use. They had a Battle Honor ability, which was to create a random practical in your hand. They've been improved. It's now a courage ability as well. So if you do have them in your hand, you may be able to guarantee at least 1 practical out of them straight away when you put them into play, as long as you are outnumbered. These guys were already not that popular. They're slightly better now. I mean, it's still a conditional ability, so I'm not sure. I'm not so hot on this one. Ancient Kratos. I don't even remember what this guy's ability. I think before he was just frontline. Now they've added courage to him as well, which makes him a little bit better. Before he was an underwhelming frontliner just because he had very low health for a 7 energy frontline. Now if he has courage triggering, he goes up to 7 health and 9 attack. Still a little underwhelming for a 7 energy card, so improvement over where he was, still not a top tier card. Alright, but speaking of top tier cards, Captain Lysander. This one's got an interesting change. So before he used to buff adjacent troops while he was in play. Now he buffs adjacent units, which means he increases your warlord's attack as well. So that could get interesting. The rest of him has sort of stayed the same. Again, Lysander was a pretty popular card as well, and this has just made him even stronger. Alright, Stellic Aethan. Now this is a great change. Stellic Aethan's base stats have not changed. Earlier, it was that if you were outnumbered, he would kill a random enemy troop, which was useful. You could work with that, right? Use your warlord or tactics to kill off the soft enemy targets, leaving a strong one on its own, then drop Stellic Aethan and he could kill it. Well, now his courage ability automatically goes to the most powerful enemy unit on the board and destroys it. Well, most powerful enemy troop on the board and destroys it. He has become significantly better. And like I said, he was popular before. Now he is extremely dangerous. This is a fantastic change. Great hard removal for the Ultramarines. Next up, coming into tactics, Retribution Strike. So Retribution Strike down here used to be that if you do 2 points of damage to an enemy for 2 energy, if it dies, you draw a card. Now it's still a card draw, but if you're outnumbered. So if you put it in play and your enemy has more units, you'll do 2 points of damage and you get to draw a card, which I think is a neat improvement. It also makes this a little bit more useful because you can use it against high health units and still be able to draw a card. Whereas before the change, you could only use it to finish off low health units if you wanted to get a card draw out of it. So I do like this change over here. Relentless Pursuit. Where is that gone? That is the next one. I cannot remember what this card did before. I think they've just lowered the... Yeah, they just lowered the cost, right? Though it used to be 2 energy, now it's 1. And I think that has actually made it more useful. For 2 energy, it was quite an expensive effect, I think. You're still going to struggle to find something to take out of your deck to put this in its place. But it's... Maybe I'll play around with this. I'll need to retweak my Ultramarines deck and try and get Relentless Pursuit to work. Alright, what's next? We have interlocking tactics. So this is one which used to always come up for me when with Ultramarines. It still draws 2 cards, and now it has actually added anti-stealth if you're outnumbered. So yeah, I think interlocking tactics used to draw as many cards as you had units on the board before. Sometimes that could lead to overdrawing. This now caps it. It also means it's always useful even if it's just your warlord on his own. And with stealth removal, this actually fits very well with the Ultramarines deck. You no longer have to throw in neutral cards for stealth removal. Right, we're almost done. We're getting to some of the best ones now. The Mantle of Ultramar, once held to be one of the worst legendaries. It's still not... Actually, I don't want to say it's not that great, but they have changed it quite a lot, because before it used to only trigger at the beginning of your turn. If you had some troops on the board and you played this, you were really hoping those troops would survive until the start of your next turn so that they could start benefiting from this. By changing it to Resolution, though, you're always guaranteed to get this buff. So basically you're giving the neighboring troops extra health, so adding 2 health in total across 2 neighboring troops for 5 energy. Still a little situational. That 1 point of health they get is often not going to be enough to prevent them from being destroyed in your enemy's turn, but it's a lot better than it used to be. I will try this out. I just personally don't hold out too much hope for it. I still feel it's kind of slow for what it does. Next, Lords of Ultramar. So where's that gone? That used to be really expensive. Now it's changed to a 4 cost. I think this used to be an 8 cost unit. It would draw a bunch of cards from your deck. But now what this one does is it buffs all the Ultramarines who are in your hand and your deck. So it's changed from being a late game card to an early game card, and I think it's going to make your troops extremely powerful. It's a little slow, but it's one of those trade-off deck cards. And I think the equivalents you see for the Iron Warriors, which buff everything in your hand and deck, are quite popular. So I think Lords of Ultramar is going to start seeing a lot more use. And lastly, Wrath in Betrayal, one of the most powerful Ultramarine cards, was always crippled by its high cost before. And now it's just tweaked down a little bit. At 6 energy, it's even more usable than it was before, and it's going to really punish at players who allow their Ultramarine opponents to build up a board presence. Alright, so that's the Ultramarines, but as I mentioned, 8 different factions have been changed. So now we're moving on to Faction 2, which is the Thousand Sons. Now, honestly, I haven't really played the Thousand Sons enough since their last big faction change. I played them a bit during the event, but let's go through and take a look. So we're going to start with Prades Squad. So their stats have now changed to 2 attack, 3 health. They have Psyker 2, but the big change to them is they now gain precognition until your next turn. That's going to be a big help. One of the main reasons these guys would ever go into a deck was just to be able to help you with early game psychic power build-up. With precognition, they're going to be very good at that. So this has become almost a must-have card, I think, for Thousand Sons decks. With the Warlord's ability to generate psychic energy having been nerfed, you really rely on troops, and with precognition, Prades Squad can give you around at least 1 turn, maybe longer if you're lucky, of psychic power. Obviously that has great synergy with Ahriman, who can keep refreshing their precognition as well. Alright, next up is Amunis Squad. Where have they gone over here? So I think what's been changed over here is actually the rally, which has been added. So no, I think before their ability was they were 4 attack, 4 health, but you could use 1 psychic energy every turn to boost their stats. But now it's been changed. They've become a psychic power generator, and I think that's great. They've got average stats with Unstoppable, and giving your Warlord extra psychic power is going to be Very appreciated. Pentu Dast is next. He was one of the essential Thousand Suns cards because of his healing ability. And here's a great one. He's been moved up from Psyker 1, where I think he was dropped to during the nerf, and he's back to Psyker 2, which means every turn he generates enough psychic energy to use his own healing ability. So once you have him on the board, you're basically guaranteed to be able to heal 3 points every turn. Here's an interesting one, a hidden one. So, he's actually had a couple of changes. Before, Hidden One used to be 5 energy, below average attack, average health, and he had precognition. And for spending psychic energy, you could actually, like the text says over here, be able to create copies of enemy tactics. But the big problem before was he actually never created any psychic energy himself. So he was just a sink on your pool of psychic energy. Now he's a huge asset. Not only is he creating 2 points of psychic energy every turn, but his ability does not even use that. Instead, he uses regular energy to power his ability, which means you get to use him and end up with more psychic energy every turn. And with precognition, it's hard to kill him. So he's this little generator of psychic power just sitting there. That is really good. Next up, Ahriman's Cabal. So where are they hanging out? They have moved over here. So their stats are, I think, back to 6-6. I think they were originally 6-6 in the balance pass. They dropped to 5, and now they're back to 6-6. They have Psyker 3, and they now gain precognition for a turn, which is going to help them to really stay alive. And check this out. They convert regular energy into a huge amount of psychic energy. That is going to be powerful. So this has become one of the critical cards, I think, now for the Thousand Suns. I like what's going on with it. Actually, I'll talk about that in a moment. Next, City of Light is another one. So they have reduced the cost from 3 energy to 2 energy. They keep the same effect. And I think what you can see here is the devs probably felt that it was getting a little too hard after the last nerf to generate psychic energy, and so they're sort of tweaking it a little from that. And lastly, Flesh Change still has its ability to destroy an Astartes and gain a bunch of psychic energy, but they've added to it drawing a card, which also makes this much more desirable. So in general, what I'm seeing with the Thousand Suns is the devs are trying to move a bit more to a playstyle where they rely even more than they did before on using troops to be able to generate psychic energy, which I like. It's gonna help continue to flesh out the Thousand Suns. I'm gonna go and try them in the event, I think, and see how they do. Alright, so that's the Thousand Suns change. Next, we have a couple of tweaks to the Salamanders. So let's go over to them. Oops, that's not them. There they are. Number 1 is Hope. So that was a teaching card over here. And it's been changed now. Draw a troop from your deck and it just reduces the cost. So it's basically become like a version of Abandoned Supplies, which focuses on drawing troops. I mean, if anything, then it's sort of like, where's it gone here from the neutral deck? I think it was a Mechanicum card. 3 energy. Where's it gone here? Yeah, it's War Room was the neutral card. 3 energy, guaranteed to draw a tactic and cost 2 less. And now Hope is the Salamander's equivalent, but it draws a guarantee to draw a troop and costs 2 less. Next is Resilience. Where's Resilience gone here? They've increased the cost to 5. So this was another teaching, and they made this a bit more expensive. So I think they thought that it was probably a little too cheap where it was before. Here's a friendly Astartes that died in game and put it in play. They probably want to ideally save this until your high cost units have been dying. Otherwise, if you play it too early in the match, you're spending 5 energy to get like a 2, 3, or 4 energy unit in play. So try and hold off on that one. Okay, Legion number 4 with a change is the Iron Hands, and the Iron Hands have become pretty powerful. One of the cards which previously had a big buff to it was the Hammer. So the Hammer pre-nerf used to deal damage to only troops. With the nerf, they made it do damage to enemy warlords as well. I think they felt that was getting a little bit out of hand because they have just increased the cost slightly. So it's still like a bit of a finisher card for the Iron Hands, but it's just not played as early on in the match. Potentially giving your enemy an opportunity to get enough, to get a stronger troop on the board who might live through it. So a little bit of a nerf there for the Hammer. Alright, next up is a really important one. Defenders of Caliban and our man Luther. So actually nothing has particularly changed there except to his transformed forms. Let's go and look at the Arch Betrayer. And this is now interesting. A lot of people have been complaining that Luther was becoming unstoppable because of how he could just take control of any damaged troops. And the Betrayers the Defenders of Caliban had lots of abilities which could do a little bit of damage to a target, which would set them up for Luther's Arch Betrayer form. So this has had a big nerf to it. You can no longer ping a really powerful unit with 1 point of damage and then take control of it quickly. Now only units with 5 or less health can be taken control of. I think that's a very good change. I mean, maybe it's a little bit too far, or maybe it's just right. I haven't tried playing with or against Luther since this change. I know that it's definitely needed because I've been playing Luther for the last day, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Once I trigger the Arch Betrayer, I think I've only ever lost one match. Apart from that, it was an instant I win button. So this is an interesting change. I think it will bring balance back to the force, back to the game. And yeah, I'm glad the devs did this. But there's more. Another really important change which has been made is to Lucretia. So Lucretia previously had a passive ability which would reduce the cost of all of her troops by 1. And that's now being changed. It only reduces the cost of infantry troops, so no more cheaper structures or vehicles for her. So I think that was needed. I never liked playing Lucretia. I really disliked playing against her. It was too easy to get swarmed. So I'm glad to see a change like this. I'm curious to see what the net result will be, because the majority of units that Lucretia players would use were still infantry, so this is a little bit of a minor tweak to them. It means that stuff like the mortar vehicle will not come out as early when you're facing Lucretia. Alright, a couple more factions left only. Next up is Mechanicum, where we have one card which has been changed, and that was the latest legendary which was added, which was Forbidden Protocols. So at first glance it looks like nothing has changed here, but they've made a giant change. The pool of random effects which could apply no longer includes Bloodthirst. So Forbidden Protocols no longer has a chance of turning a powerful unit into an unstoppable killing blow in 1 turn. So it was maybe a little bit harsh. I maybe would have preferred an increase in cost of Forbidden Protocols, make it cost 7 energy or something instead. But it's going to hit Mechanicum playstyles quite hard. So, oh well, so much for that. Big nerf on the Mechanicum over there. And the last one, really important, which I'm so glad they did, which is Khorne's Favor. Finally nerfed. Let's go down and take a look at it. So Khorne's Favor before used to add +4 attack to your warlord until your next turn. And that didn't sound too bad until you started facing warlords like Garrow or some of the defenders of Caliban warlords who could just repeatedly act by either playing free or cheap troops. So Khorne's Favor instead now gives your warlord just +1 attack, and it gives them Bloodthirst. So it's still helpful for melee for like direct damage focused warlords, but it's going to kill that playstyle of trying to build up a hand of free or cheap units and then dropping Khorne's Favor and repeatedly attacking until you have killed the enemy warlord. So I think this was probably the most important change in this balance pass, because it fixes what I feel was a very unintended style of gameplay. Alright, so that's a run through all of the changes in this round. So what do you guys think? I'm happy, very happy with this round. I'm very keen to try out the Ultramarines and the Thousand Suns. I think the Defenders of Caliban and the Chaos change were extremely needed. Lucretia was a well thought out change. Well, Lucretia and the Mechanicum change were well thought out. And the Salamanders and Iron Hands changes are... I'm a bit more neutral about those. They were very subtle. I don't think it's going to make a giant change to the game. Alright, well, thanks for watching this video, everyone, and I will see you on the battlefield. Bye for now, guys.